Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Esteemed Gentlemen podcast. I'm your host, Scott Labrie. It's Wednesday, April 28th. I forgot that part. Usually I say that before I say my name. So I said it now. And I'm joined by Uncle Teabag, Tyler Sunt.
Hello.
Hello. And we have All Dairy Eric DeShane as well.
Ahoy hoy.
I should have done you guys in reverse and just played along with it and then just fuck it all up.
Screw it. We're doing it live. Screw it.
Flip the table known as the podcast intro. No.
Yeah.
We got a topic. It's brought to you by Eric DeShane. I'll let him explain it. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. No, so my thought process for today was, what was some of the things that you guys had that seemed like a big deal and you're worried about and stressed over, but turned into like just everything worked out well, everything turned out fine in the end, and it wasn't even worth worrying about in the end. So I went to my family's on Sunday. I was looking through some stuff I had in storage, and I found some of these letters that got sent to me from these kids. I did a presentation in one of the schools right after my Para Pan Am games in '07. So what it was a cousin of mine taught at one of the schools nearby here, and she asked me to do a presentation for her school. I assumed it was going to be, the way she explained it to me was in front of the whole school. So I had it's been like a week making a presentation, slides, having a whole like stage kind of demonstration ready to go. So I was stressed out. I was freaking out. Like, what the hell was going to happen? Like, can I do this? Can I not, screw this up? And to get there, like as I walk at the door, I see her, I talk with her and everything else. She's like, oh yeah, no, so my class is over here. I'm like, oh, it's just the class. It's not the who said it was the whole school? I'm like, I assumed it was like the full 400 kids, whole school. I'm like, oh, thank God. So I just went to the class, did the presentation there instead. It turned out really well. It was an hour long. It went great. And nothing was too bad with that. So it was fun to show all that around. And then afterwards, all the kids sent me little letters about how they thought about me and what I showed them and what I talked to them about, and it was really touching. It was nice with that. But I remember freaking out for days about doing this presentation, and yeah, in the end turned out fine because it was just like 30 kids instead. So I'm like, oh, like that was, what was I worried about? If I would just listened to her a little bit more, I would have realized like, yeah, it's just her class, not the whole school, you dumbass. Like, oh, you'd have been fine. Like, yeah. So that just made me think of like, oh, what else have you guys had in your lifetime that's been like, oh yeah, just what was I worried about? That was stupid of me. Like, geez.
Every decision I've ever made.
I know it's
Yeah. Well, I had stuff that turned out okay after.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
I mean, going to radio school. Like,
yeah.
I was supposed to go to radio school like probably 4 years before I actually did, but I kept chickening out and never doing it, and then eventually I finally was like, fuck it, I hate my life. I gotta change something. So then I finally decided to go do it. But then it's like, damn, should have done this way sooner.
Yeah.
So I wasn't such an old man doing
I know.
this kind of thing.
I was the same way too when I became a partsman too, because that was something my dad was always saying, like, oh, just go do that when you're 20 years old. And it's like, I didn't want to. I thought it would be something else, do something different by now. And looking back on now, I finally got my journeyman at 30 years old. I'm like, I should have got this when I was 20. Like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, just stupid like that. It's because now I just lost 10 years of a career where it could have been a lot further ahead than what I was, right? So I was like, shit. But that wasn't so much of that. But now,
yeah. You got something, Tyler?
I'm trying to. Well, everything that I think of is I had like anxiety over something, and I did it, and it was just terrible.
Oh yeah,
really.
Too. Yeah.
I have so many of those things. Something that turned out okay is I guess like I was terrified of women, like asking them out and then them just being like, ew, gross, no, I don't want to, whatever. Like I still have that. I still wonder like why Carly chose me. Like I don't understand. Like whatever. I still have that anxiety like all the time too. And I used to get teased by the guys in my class and stuff and whatever. So I never asked anybody out ever. Like I was just too scared to, and to express my feelings towards somebody and blah blah blah. So I was always like in the friend zone a lot too. So yeah, because there was I just had a crush on everybody, honestly. But so after I talked to my grandmother, and she's like, Peavy, the worst I can say is no. And then that way and you just move on. And it's like, I guess it's I guess you're right. So then I remember I was well, I don't know how much detail I want to get into, but I was driving and I was like, "Hey, I really like you. I like hanging out with you, and I think we should do more than just like just hang out and stuff." And well, she was dating somebody at the time too, and I was like, "I'm sorry that this is coming out of nowhere, but I have to." And then she was like, "Oh, that's weird." And she's like, "That's creepy." I'm like, "Ah, fuck! I should not have fucking listened to my grandma. What a dumb idea." And then she's like, "Okay, well, I'll call him tomorrow and we'll hang out. That sounds great. I've been thinking about it too myself." And I'm like, "Oh." That well only lasted like maybe a month or two, but that was my first.
Still,
It's like
yeah.
you know what, man? She was right. You
Mhm.
never know unless you ask.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was a great month and a half ish.
Not bad,
But it's
not
just
bad.
like,
Yeah.
holy shit, and it just gives you that little confidence boost, and it's
Yeah.
just say it, man. Just ask.
Wait, so she broke up with her boyfriend and then started dating you?
Yeah.
Dog.
Tyler, the
Yeah.
homewrecker.
You
Well,
dog.
No.
see, no, okay, there is a bit of a backstory. No, we're not gonna talk about that. I was well, she was unhappy with him, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm a
Alright.
little better than that, I think so. And turned out I wasn't, so whatever. But at least I found out, right? And it wasn't
Yeah.
actually as bad as you thought it would be, you know?
Mhm.
There's lots of fish in the sea. Shut the fuck up. There's also lots of trash in the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that actually worked out,
Hmm.
and it just helped my boost my confidence, and then
Mhm.
I just started asking. It's like, "Hey," and like with the online dating thing, man, I was just like a wizard at that stuff. You just type up a nice little read the profile, I get the little template going, "Hey, so and
Mhm.
so, whatever," and yeah, sure, let's hang out. Okay. And boom, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
There are like
it's
I think like especially like in radio, there's a lot of things that is like, okay, you're forced to go do this kind of thing. That it's
Mhm.
like doing live on locations and remotes. Just dreaded it. Like it's like I don't want to do this. I don't want to be like out there because it's always like
Mhm.
awkward to be like talking to people. That's fine, but then it's just like, but you're also like paying attention. Like, oh, I gotta go like talk for a minute straight just about this stupid barbecue that I'm at that's
Mhm.
serving beef on a bun at like an oil parts kind of place that's like I don't have no idea what the fuck they sell, but they got beef on the bun. I was like, it's free. Get your beef on the bun, and you're supposed to talk about that for like a whole minute. That's a long time
Mhm.
to
yeah.
fill. So I always dreaded like doing that, and it's like, well, it's only like 3-4 hours, and it's like it goes by fast enough, but it's like that's just me
Yeah.
like constant anxiety about
Mhm.
everything. Um, and then yeah, like hosting events and stuff like that. It's like I don't want it. I remember
Yeah.
having to be the MC at like the Vilna fair or whatever the heck trade show fair something, and I was taking over for my other coworker. He was doing like the first morning part, and then I came in the afternoon and then did that. And I showed up, and it was like right in the middle of an auction. So they're auctioning off all kinds of crap, and I think they're auctioning off like hay bales or something like that, or I don't know. And
Probably.
so they're like,
Hey,
"Oh
man.
yeah, here's the auctioneer. You go say hi to him." And then he's like, "Oh, you're taking over for me?" And I'm like, "I have no idea what's going on." They're just like, "Go talk to him." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I guess so. If it's done, it's like, all right, we'll start auctioning off stuff. It's like, well, I'm not I'm not an auctioneer. I don't do that. It's like, well, what are you doing here then? And I'm like, I don't know,
I don't
man.
know.
I don't know. I literally just showed up 5 minutes ago, and I got no instructions. So I just like handed it to him. I was like, fuck. And like I heard like people chuckle in the back. I'm like, God damn it. So like, okay, whatever. I'll just hang around. And then eventually it's like, okay, now's the part where I talk, where I tell people we're gonna play some kids games in the field outside. We're gonna catch the chickens
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And so the auctioneer guy, he has like his bus or whatever that has the speakers on the side because he actually goes to like auction sites and that's what he uses. So
Yeah.
he's like, okay, well, you'll get in the van or whatever in the bus, and you'll be on the microphone and stuff like that, and you'll just kind of say whatever. And it was so stupid because like you had the lady or the guy, the farmer who had the chicken, who was running the event. He's like yelling over the crowd to me what to say. He's like, "We'll get the 12-year-olds next." All right, everybody, if you're 12 years old and you want to try and catch a chicken, get in there. And it's so awkward. And I was like, and then at one point, some lady like came to like, nobody can hear you. The speaker isn't on. And I was just like,
get me out of here.
So I like tapped the auctioneer guy who's just like watching them catch chickens. He's like has his arm on the gate at the back of the bus. I'm like, oh, there's no sound out there right now. He's like, oh, okay, I'll fix it. He fixed it up, and it was just a total gong show. I was just like, get me out of here.
Oh my god, that's funny.
That doesn't fit with Erickson. That is like that was the thing I was dreading to do, and then it did go totally
bad. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Terrible.
I remember that was like the first time I ever flew like overseas when we went to Brazil. Like it should have just been like a simple 10-hour flight's the same, but ended up being delayed twice on the way there. So once in Buffalo and once in Brazil. So a 1-day flight took 3 days, and both times was like, yeah, we're laid over, so we're staying for the night here and there, and shooting motels and sketchy places. You don't know what the hell's going on. I'm like, this is my first time like flying anywhere's big. Like, what the fuck is going on? And just paranoid and freaking out the whole time. And oh yeah, it was bad. For the one night I hardly slept, like maybe an hour on the plane and maybe an hour in the hotel. And just I'm like, oh, we'll practice this morning. I was like, oh fuck, I can't do this right now. We just got settled in. Like, come on, guys, like relax for a little while. No, we're 2 days behind already. We can't do that. It's like, oh,
right.
All right, do this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that sucks. But often when they go good, though, it's better stories that way. I find. But,
yeah, things that turned out well after. That's. I'm still having a really hard time because
everything's going so bad for you all the time.
Well, not all the time. I guess like when I do a lot of the filming stuff, like for weddings and stuff. Well, actually, the first wedding that I got paid to go and film, I was charging like, I don't know, like $500. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm overcharging this poor lady. Holy man, you know? So I'm out there, and I remember she's like, okay, if you don't mind, like, I'm going to go out to the bridesmaids and I'm going to surprise them with some gifts. So can you make sure that you're out there and capture that part? That's a really important part for me. Like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, I got it. So I went outside and I'm ready. Everything's on. Everything looks good. I got the right, zoom and the right lens on there. Everything's good to go. Okay, so I hit record. She comes out. I captured everything. I'm like, oh, flawless. This is beautiful. Perfect. And then she's like, how'd it turn out? I'm like, oh, perfect. It was awesome. She's like, okay, great. And she walked in. So I went on there and I hit play. And I had an external microphone on. I didn't turn the microphone on. So there was no sound. There was no speech. I'm like, fucking kill me. Oh my God. So then I ended up just editing it together. And just put like music and skipped that whole part and just made it seem like everything was just kind of like I edited it really well. It was like distracting where she never mentioned anything. I don't know if she said anything.
Okay.
But then terrible for her, but luckily for me, the divorce was like 6 months later. So it wasn't even that big of a deal. I'm like, oh, thank God. Which is terrible to say. This is terrible to say, but
a little.
That was like my heart sank right down to the pit of my stomach because there's nothing worse than that, because that was like the most important part to her because she cared so much about her friends taking all this time off. She wanted to talk about each one of her bridesmaids there. Like, there wasn't even a speech at the wedding. This was like outside of her house on the patio, whatever, right? I just royally fucked it up so bad. It was terrible. But I had this was my first time being out there filming it, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then luckily after that, I was like, hey, I have a lot of YouTube tutorials to be watching now. I got a lot of YouTubing to do to figure out how to do this right. So yeah, I got lucky there for sure.
Good.
I did the editing thing and made it work. So
that kind of reminds me of my first day being a board op in Bonneville radio. And essentially it was live on location thing. So like before when I was in radio doing live on locations, we had an app that would just like essentially upload the file to like Dropbox, and then our like system software would grab it from Dropbox and like put it into the actual like playlist or whatever. But when I was a board op, it was like old fashioned where it's like, okay, you have to call the dude on the phone like a minute before he's supposed to go on air, and then it's like, okay, we're in the last song, and then you count them down, and then once the song ends, you drop the splitter on, and then it's like blah, 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 live on location, and then it goes like with a drum beat behind him, and then he starts talking. And so I did like a few days of training before that. So I went into the Bonneville. Of course, like you can't actually train because you can't take over the radio because the board's constantly playing music. So it's like, well, here's kind of theoretically what you got to do, what buttons you got to push. I'm like, okay, I wrote it all down. I kind of know what I have to do. But the problem is that there was 2 live on the locations going on at the same time that day. Oh. So you had your stop break, which was like about, I don't know, a minute to a minute and a half of commercials. So the song would end, and I would have the first guy on the phone ready to go. And then as soon as he was done, it was like, hang up the phone, call the next guy, and then get him to go on the air. And the first cut in, I was like kind of rushed because the first guy, he was from Ontario, so he had an Ontario number. So like it's like, okay, got the first guy done, boom, and then go to call the next guy. It's like long distance, or it's like you have to dial it again essentially because I didn't have the 1 in front of it. So I'm like,
yeah.
And like someone's like ticking down, and I'm like, fuck, call him again, like ring, and then he's like, all right, let's go. And he's like, how much time we got? He's like, you got 10 seconds. He's like, oh shit. I mean, like, he's a pro, he like did it before, so it's just like he's like boom, like as soon as he's ready to go. But I was just like, I had a mini heart attack after that break. It's like, I can't do this. A job, I can't. It's too hard. Like, I was like, I can't do it. And like to add the extra stress, there was like also a family reunion happening like right after that. I was supposed to like do this job my first day and then go there. So I was like just already stressing about this job, and I was like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. But like after the first 2 breaks, it's like, okay, I'm in my rhythm. I know what I'm doing now. It's like,
yeah,
it's good.
That's good. Turned
Pop
out well.
your cherry, you're good to go.
But you just have that like heart attack, you clench your butt cheeks moment. You're just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I still do that way too often, all the time. It's like, yeah, no, I'm right. I'll triple check things. I know I'm right, but still, the moment it comes to, I'm like, did I do it right? I don't know. It's like, no, yeah, you did it right. Just stop second guessing yourself, right? Because you were right. But
yeah, that's how I felt with that audio with the wedding video. As soon as I realized, as soon as it dawned on me that I did not record any of the audio, it's just like I just wanted to like summon a portal and jump into it.
And you get
just,
those sweats going on.
Yeah.
So bad. Like I want to throw up. And it was like a deal, honestly.
No.
Like, but I still felt pretty bad though. But
divorce 6 months later. Oh my god, just man.
Yeah, that was like a thing too. Well, I actually let Eric talk because
no, go ahead. I have to say.
I'm like constantly talking about the radio thing, but like when I first started in High Prairie, I was nervous. You know, my first day, and my boss.
You were
He was very cool. Yeah, all that exactly. I was the only person there, like 4 out of 5 days of the week, essentially. And the other guy's a sales guy, so he's not on air. But just doing it, I was like nervous, and my program director, super cool guy. He's like, hey, if you screw up, nobody cares. It's High Prairie Radio. It's like,
yeah.
Oh,
true. Okay. Yeah. I was like, he's like, nobody's listening. Like, okay.
That's awesome.
Kind of got a point. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. It's like, yeah, just think of it that way. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. What was one thing you guys had that you weren't nervous about, but other people were nervous for you? So I know one thing for me was when I finally moved away from home and moved to Edmonton for the first time at 17 years old. I still wasn't 18 yet. My parents were freaking the hell out. I was like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like it was fun. It worked out well in the end, but oh man, that summer I was like, are you sure? Like you can, like, yeah, it's fine. I can do it. I can take care of myself for crying out loud. But remember that was one thing that was like, oh yeah, it's it turned out fine. Like, why you were so worried? Because
Yeah.
everything was accessible, everything was easy to get to. Like, I don't know. So that's one thing for me that was like, really, no, it's no problem. I got it.
I think like I was kind of saying like I don't really have one, but I mean, kind of the only thing was I think maybe moms kind of have the same sort of thing is like when you go to your first like high school party or something like that,
Oh yeah.
and they know like you're gonna get drunk and stuff, and you're just like, it's like, all right, here's your drinks, and like take it easy, and if you don't feel good, like talk to like their parents are gonna be there, like all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And then I just come back the next day. It's like, man, I was the shit at that party. They loved me. It was the best. I can't wait to go to another one.
Yep. Yeah. I have
Oh, yeah.
pretty much the same
Same
story.
thing,
My
yeah.
mom and dad would just be like, I'd be like, oh, so what movies watch this week? I'm like, don't you have like a party to go to? Just go to a party, man. So it's kind of the opposite for me. Like, get out of the leave us alone, go
Leave us
away.
alone, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys
Most
want to
times I
watch
had
an extended edition of Lord of the Rings? Get out of the house.
Yeah, no. Exactly.
Most of the time with that growing up, most of the time with that was mostly was with a family event and already anyway. So my parents were usually there all the time. So it was
Yeah.
camp or some other reunion or something. Was like, oh yeah, there's right over there. Keep an eye
Yeah.
on me. So no big deal that way. So
Hmm.
yeah. Oh, anything else that you guys got there? Or?
No, I have a stack of all the things that I failed as
I know.
anxiety, failed things, but
I'm trying to stay away from the sad stuff because I got a pile of that shit too. But
right,
here's the
but
positive
things that
stuff.
turned out okay.
Yeah.
Man, no, sorry, man. I they don't know.
Any like tests or anything like that? I was always like, well, whatever tests. I don't care.
Yeah, same.
Never
I
stressed
studied.
about that.
I know that the last one I could think of offhand was the journeyman test. That one was a little tough, but it wasn't too bad. But that too, it was like, oh, I stressed out, studied for days, and now it's like, oh, well, it's whatever. So,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
but that's
Right.
that's just the maturity thing too, because it was like, this is my schooling. I am doing this for myself. It's that pressure you put on yourself, right? That got me
Mhm.
with that. So I did the work for it. But now it's like, oh, why did I worry so much about that stupid test? I aced it for crying out loud. Like, what the hell?
Interviews, I would have a pretty hard time with. I'd be really nervous about it.
Mhm,
But yeah, because I don't really go through too many interviews, right?
mhm.
So
True.
most of my jobs, I've been, 5 years usually.
Yeah.
And then before I go to my next one, which hey, 5 years is coming up. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, podcast, take off.
All right.
But yeah, so I really used to. I remember my very first interview. That was nerve wracking, like
Mhm.
really nerve wracking. Well, I mean, I worked with my dad for quite a while, and then I went to work at Boston Pizza when it first opened. Like it had just been built and just got management and whatever. They're looking for people, and they had trainers coming from Texas to come and train us. Big Dave and Little Dave was their names, and but anyway, before that, I was gonna go for an interview, and I'm like, oh man, because I remember in CTS, whatever, it's just basically like job preparation class that you have. It's like in grade 9 or 10. I was 16 at the time, so yeah, I had to go for an interview. I was so worried, so I had like this really like baggy suit with a tie and had the slick, greasy hair, zits just shining like glossy shine. I drove up there with my Sprint, and I walked in there, and I was applying to be like a cook or a scullery technician, which is like a dishwasher. It's like, why are you worrying so much for a measly $5.90 an hour job, which is what it was. Minimum wage then was $5.90 an hour. I was so nervous and worried that I wasn't going to get the job and whatever. And he's just like, "Oh, how old are you? 16. Okay, well, when can you start?" I'm like, I had all this mental
Yeah.
preparation. What are your hopes and goals with this career? What is your future, whatever? And this and that. He's like, no. Oh, okay. So you're making like minimum wage. Yep. $5.90 an hour. Yep. So when can you start? I'm like, really? That's all you're gonna ask? Like, okay, I can start. I don't know. Immediately, I guess. He's like, okay, can you start tomorrow? I'm like, I guess. Sure. And it's like, okay. So then
Yeah.
turned out totally fine. There's no big issue at all.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my
Awesome job.
first job interview, which was 13 years old when I go work at a grocery store. And, being 13, it's like, oh, fuck. You're so worried about it. And I remember going to the back and I was like, talking to the grocery manager because I was going to be a stock boy. And for some reason, we didn't use like the front offices, probably because they were in use or something. So he brought me back to the meat manager's office, which is like small, like a closet essentially. It's more of a closet than an office really. But it was like right next door or right beside the one, the cardboard baler, and two, the back overhead door where the truck gets unloaded. And I think I went for an interview when like right after school or something like that. So which is the time that the truck gets in and gets unloaded. So he's like, "All right, come back here," and he starts talking. And all of a sudden, all this noise starts happening because they're unloading the truck. He like opens the door, and there's a bunch of other teenagers who I recognize from school. They're a little older than me. He's like, "Shut the fuck up out there!" And then like one guy's like, "You shut the fuck up in there." He's like, "Okay," and he closes the door, and I was just like, "Okay, that was a good icebreaker kind of thing."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, so why do you want a job?" I was like, "Well, I want to buy a PS3." He's like, "Oh, cool. I like video games." Jeremy here, another guy. He got a PS3. He thinks it's awesome. I was like, "Oh, awesome, cool, yeah."
Yeah. Not even talking about the job, just
Yeah.
talking about video games. That's cool.
So can you put a can on the shelf? It's like, I think so. What about a jar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I remember my first job interview. No, my first job interview was with Gen Mac in Bonneville. So, and my uncle was working there at the time. So he was just like, "Oh, I need a hire labor hand. You want to work with? Yeah, sure, I'll give it a try." And hired me on, and I worked there for just about 2 years. And it was an easy labor job, but it was one of those like, "Why do you have a guy in a wheelchair like moving stuff around right now?" I was like, "Oh, it's my nephew. He works here for us." Really? He's like, "Yeah, that's fine." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
all right, cool." So, and yeah, that was a great little experience with that. Just lots of woodworking and carpentry stuff. But it was one of those like, "Do you want a job?" I'm like, "Sure." That's
Yeah.
easy enough. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
you're lucky with that. Yeah, I wasn't too nervous for that one.
God, they're like, "Why is you moving stuff around? You
Yeah.
should be at the front entrance greeting people." Like,
Yeah.
or something. Like, what do you mean? Why can't he do that?
The
Like,
best thing with that job was they had a powered pallet jack, so it would
yeah.
literally pull me around on the job site. I was moving pallets
nice.
all over the spots. It was perfect. Just
Oh, was it like one of the powered ones?
powered ones, yeah.
Nice.
Just pop it up, motor me around the whole thing, and just move everything around. That was my job for days, weeks.
Yeah.
Just moving shit with that powered jack.
Cool.
Yeah, that was easy.
Cool. Well, we're kind of at time. Anything else you guys want to bring up? Any skeletons in your closet that you want to toss out there?
Yeah, let's not bring that one up yet.
The nails in the board are coming out of the closet, so packed in there.
I was nervous when the Toronto Raptors went to the NBA Finals. I was like,
"Oh yeah,
they're gonna lose," but then they won. That's the ultimate.
It's okay.
Ultimate, it turned out just fine.
Yeah.
There you go. I got my Toronto Raptors reference in. That's going to do it for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a like and subscribe right here on YouTube. And if you're listening on a podcast service like Google, Spotify, or Apple, give it a thumbs up or a 5 stars or a subscribe, whatever you have to do on there to keep notified on new episodes. And then why not head over to our Facebook page as well and give us a like on there. That's going to do it. We'll be back here tomorrow with another topic. Until then, though, I bid you adieu.
Adieu.
Au revoir.